I'd like to talk about different behavioral styles. Now, we all have our default preferred approach when it comes to the way we work, and there are various psychometric tests out there that people can do to assess through a series of questions what their particular preferred style and natural default is. You may well have done these before or heard of things like Myers-Briggs tests, where it determines your preferences in how you approach work. One method of determining where people sit is a color scheme method, where there are different behavioral types determined as red people who are confident, they're fast paced, they're direct. Yellow people are expressive, enthusiastic, and energetic. Green people who are amiable, empathetic, and listeners. And the blue people, very detailed, analytical, and systematic. So with these approaches, you'll probably find your red people take charge. They may be a bit competitive. They like that structure. They're probably very sociable in their approach. Yellow people, super enthusiastic, lots of concepts, spontaneous, imaginative, lots of ideas. Again, very sociable people. Green people, maybe slightly more reserved, observing, looking at what's going on, empathetic to colleagues, like to include others. Um, uh, so less enthusiastic than the yellows, but are very collaborative in individuals. And then the blue people tend to be that more engineering focus, very purposeful, very structured, like things to be evidence based. Now, with the color scheme, you tend to find the more red end of things, more spontaneity is there, more willing to take risks. The more you move to the green and then blue end of things, more risk averse it tends to get. Now, we will find in the workplace we probably move from our natural default color into different colors depending on the circumstance. So you're not fixed in this one color scheme, but this is probably your preferred style. And so there's various online assessments you can do to determine which one you would be defined as, if you like. So with those natural working styles, when we see someone who is red, their natural style is that confidence. They want quick decisions, not afraid to challenge where necessary. So that behaviour might be demonstrated in a meeting. They're probably pushing the meeting forward, very keen to set actions, want to see very clear results and where the added value is. So how do you communicate those red people? Be clear and direct when communicating. Focus on those outcomes and solutions rather than the problems. Let them drive the conversation forward, but be ready to challenge if necessary. With the yellow folk, they are those expressive, enthusiastic, energetic, lots of ideas. Probably spot those people because they like to tell an interesting story and visualize things. May give longer responses to their questions, but not necessarily into the technical detail. Very optimistic folk. So they like to know the why behind what you're sharing rather than the how. So not into the detail, the mechanics, what the end result, why we do this. So celebrate their desire for collaboration and celebrate their ideas before maybe you critique those ideas and spot maybe some flaws or some adjustments that are required within their enthusiasm and inspired ideas. The green people, the amiable team players, very empathetic, more relationship focused. In the meeting, those greens will probably show genuine interest in others' ideas, will be more possibly the more patient end and the enthusiastic reds and yellows, as it were. Make sure everyone is comfortable with their role in the meeting. And to get those greens involved, ask them questions, make sure that they put their ideas forward as well. Don't let them just sit in the background making sure everyone else is okay. Bring them in the fold. Ask them what they think about the scenario that you face. And then the blues, typically that engineering focused mindset, analytical, systematic, do like it be to precise and structured, far more risk averse than the red end of things. In the meeting, they will want to see the evidence. What are we bringing to the party that that makes it clear why we need to do what's being suggested. So they like to study the facts, demonstrate you're prepared to share the resources, that data and that research, use structure and bullet points to convey messages, but give those blue people time to consider and reflect. Don't rush in as your red or yellow tendency might want you to do. So if you don't know the personality behaviors, how do you identify those personality behaviors? Consider what they are responding best to. To help determine their style, offer choice rather than guess. That person must be a red, that person must be a green. Do you want the detail or do you want the top line? That will give you an idea. The response will give you an idea as to which side of the color spectrum they naturally default to. Test that you're operating the best way for the audience. So is this the right level of detail for you? If you've got a crowd of reds you're dealing with and you're giving detail again, it's way too much, way too much. If you've got a crowd of blues, they go, we need more, we need more. So am I going too fast? Am I going too slow? Is this right for what you're looking for? So the clues to determine the color of the person, what's the bottom line? If they're objective driven, they like to be red. So lead with your conclusions first. If they've got lots of ideas and they're enthusiastic, likely to be yellow. Response is to be interactive and maybe less rigid than you might default to yourself. If it's responsive, I like to think about this. How do others feel about it? They're possibly green if they're more reflective, more quiet. So give those greens time to respond, contemplate, and avoid that pressure. And if someone's what's all the detail? Where's the evidence? Need to see that data. Likely to be blue. So respond by adding structure, data where necessary, and that logic that those people desire. If you're still unsure, there's too many different working styles, then the next slide might give a bit of clarity on that. So playing it safe. You can't decide which colours people sit, or they keep switching from one colour depending on the moment. So frame your responses, articulate with purpose and outcome. Data detail provides the logic. The impact will show it's taking into account the people, and the next steps is catering for that requirement for action. So you're covering all bases with those individuals. So with the purpose, which will give the outcome, here's what we're trying to achieve. With the data, here's the key info needed, taps into those blue engineering mindsets. Here's the impact on the people. Those green empathetic people were to see how this thing will play out that is being talked about. And next steps, here's what we do, should cater for all, regardless of the color you naturally default to. Now, with personalities, as I say, there tends to be a blend. I wouldn't say one person sits in one particular color scheme over another. We blend and we diversify depending on the audience and the circumstance. So you've got some items on the screen here that show when the different circumstance or different color scheme might play best to different circumstances. So with personality behaviors, stripping away the extremes of the color, you could really default into two types of people. There are the methodical, structured workers, the deadline driven last minute surgers. So if you can align your teams to play to those strengths, those natural styles, so align dates that help planners feel secure, but give those surgers room to operate. Create with checkpoints instead of micromanaging. It keeps that visibility without forcing everyone into the same level of rhythm. Agree what done looks like. Use each style strategically. Use those surgers for that last minute or quick decision making. Use the methodical structured workers for the things you can plan ahead with. In a bit of self-reflection, a self-awareness tool, there is a technique called the Johari window. The Johari window takes into account different aspects. There's the hidden, the aspects about yourself that when you're communicating, you know, but others don't know. So it might be your internal perspectives. You're choosing not to share, or your actions may not be in line with your true intentions, or you might be acting on things you assumed people knew. So there is the hidden stuff that you know that they don't for a variety of reasons. There's the open items, the stuff that is common knowledge. You know it, they know it. It might be the obvious things, or it might be things you've very much moved from a hidden area by actively being transparent and sharing your own viewpoints and perspectives. Then there's the blind spots, the things that they might know but you don't, which are behaviors that you might have operated on that you didn't realize you're doing, you completely overlooked, or you thought your actions and your delivery, your communication was landing in a different way to the way it actually did, and your intentions may be very different to how they've been perceived. So hidden examples, the you know they don't. You might be a really insecure public speaker. You might get really frustrated with company policies, but you can't show that to your team. So you might have aspirations for a different role to the one you're doing. They are things that you know, but your audience might not. Open examples, that effective open communication. We all know the deadlines there. We know I like to move to a deadline. If I'm very open about that deadline, they will be able to see that I've got strong management acumen and so on and so forth. So open things that are common knowledge, and through that transparency and that clarity, everyone is aware. Then the blind spots, you might be unaware that you're micromanaging. You didn't think you were micromanaging. You thought you're giving direction. You might be perceived as unapproachable because your door's always shut, and you didn't realise that was the case. You just kept it shut to keep the warmth in. You didn't realise that you were avoiding conflict. You didn't think there was an issue there in the way you had been responding to it. And then there is a fourth area. There's an unknown area where things that no one's worked out. You could potentially be a great mentor. The team don't know that. You might not know that. There's untapped creativity. There's the ability to thrive in a different environment you've not yet worked in. So this self-awareness assessment, by asking yourself some challenging questions, you might discover some things where you think, oh, I might have a blind spot here that I didn't know. So you move yourself from a low openness state to a much more open state. How do we do that? Seek feedback, share appropriately, encourage openness, and embrace the unknown. And that will help move your circles so that your open area becomes much more expansive than maybe it is at present.